Hello, this is Josh Deltner, and today we're going to be talking about how third-party code is poison to your Nuxt application, but you can cure it in 3 easy steps. I'm not talking about view libraries or node modules. Those are core parts of your application. I'm talking about chat providers, session trackers, remarketing pixels, analytics, and boatloads more. The normal way of integrating these in your code is to use the view meta tags in either your layout, your pages, or your Nuxt config. This can get pretty crazy. If you have any inline code, you have to use strings along with some special security syntax. It looks messy, and it's even harder to debug. Let's see some code. Here's the bare minimum you need to get Google Analytics running. As you can see, it's a little ugly. Let's see what this would look like in a plugin. That is much easier to understand and maintain. I just took the basic code that I got from Google Analytics, and we're just creating our script element ourselves. For the heck of it, I marked it as defer, assigned it the source that was given, then we're adding to the head ourselves. The rest is just scaffolding that Google Analytics needs to do its job. As you can see, this is far easier to maintain, but we can do even better. What if we auto-injected these plugins using a special directory? That way, all of our integrations are together in one spot. Let's see how that would look. First, I'm going to create a module to go through this special directory and auto-inject the plugins. Let's call it integrations. Don't worry about writing all this down. The code is available on my blog. Let's run through this. Nuxt has a bunch of hooks that you can tap into for various lifecycle events. For this one, we're doing things before the build is started. We're looking at our integrations folder, getting the full directory list, going through everything in that directory list. They may or may not be files. They could be subdirectories. We're getting the stat of whatever it is. And if it is a file, we're going to add a template that will come out on the other end of the build process. And then we're using whatever template name comes out of that build and pushing it directly into plugins. What this means is any file that we add to the integrations folder will be treated as a plugin and automatically injected. No more messing around with the Nuxt config file. Next, let's create the integrations folder and move our plugin over. Now let's save all this and see if it still works. I'm just going to put a little hello world here, just to make sure everything is minty fresh. I forgot to hook up my module. So let's clean this up. Get rid of all that nasty stuff. And add my integration module. And there we have it. Hello world. So that means that that plugin is now automatically injected. If we go back to our Nuxt config file, we'll see the plugin is no longer even referenced. It's just the integration module. Now that we have auto-injected plugins, we can make this even better. We all know that third-party integrations are resource hogs. It's time to make them wait. One way to do that is to force them to load after page load. Let's see what that would look like. First, I'm going to create a little helper class. Let's call it onload. Just going to shove it in a little directory called helpers. And here we're just going to put a relatively simple script that's going to wait for the onload event. So it's going to accept a callback and then an optional further delay. So we're first going to check, is the document already ready? And if so, we're just going to call the callback with the optional delay. Next, if the document isn't ready yet, then we need to listen to the load event. And here we're just going to repeat the same thing we did above. That should be about it. Now we're going to go back to our plugin and wrap it in an onload. We're just going to shove the whole thing right in there. So first we're going to import it. Then let's use it. Now let's see if it works. All right, let's clear this and refresh. You see right here that the analytics is loading after the page load event. Perfect. If we wanted to move it out even further, we could, just by adding an extra delay. Let's see what that looks like. Let's wait 5 more seconds. All right, so let's refresh. There we see the head, finally. You'll see it's way out there too. So we set it for 5 seconds, and sure enough, it did it even longer after the page load event. But sometimes there's integrations you don't need on every page. You can load those on demand. For that, I'll be using a different example using Google Maps. All right, for this next optimization, we're going to create a new helper class called OnDemand. Its purpose in life is pretty simple. Run a callback after the onload event of the script that you're giving it is finished. You'll notice we have a wait for page load parameter. For that, even if you have a page that has something that is on demand, we're still going to wait for your app to load and the page load event before we run this callback. Let's walk through it a little bit. Here we have our class variables. This is really the only public function that is available. It takes a function to call back. If the script that you gave it is already loaded, it'll just run the callback. If not, it'll add it to the list of callbacks that are waiting. Next, we trigger the loading of the script. You'll notice this code looks very familiar. After the script is loaded, we empty our callback queue. And that's it. I created a new integration called Maps. Here we're importing the on-demand helper. And this time we're using the inject argument. We're creating a new instance of the on-demand loader, injecting this whole plugin with the keyword places, exposing a function called plot that accepts an element, a latitude, and a longitude that will trigger the load event on our on-demand loader. The callback that we're passing it is just a call to Google Maps to actually render the map. Let's see how it looks. And there we are. It works just fine. Let's take another look at our network graph to see if it's waiting for page load. Yep, sure is. Sometimes loading something on demand isn't enough. If you want to go the extra mile, you can load it just before it's visible. For that, we're going to use the View Observe Visibility library. So for that, we'll create a new plugin. We're going to import View. Then import the library. Then we're just going to tell View to use it. Now, we just have to add it to our Nuxt config file. Now we can add the directive to our component. To make sure that we can actually trigger the loading, let's move it off the page a little bit. All right, maybe a lot. Now instead of using mounted, we're going to move this to a function. Let's call it plot. Now we just have to add the directive to our map. So let's see it in action. Refresh the page. Clear all this out. Looking for the word maps. So far, so good. We don't see anything. Let's keep on scrolling. And there we are. We see all the network traffic come in as soon as it becomes visible. Just what we wanted. I think that about wraps it up. Today we talked about how third-party code is poison and how moving it to plugins makes it much more manageable. You can leverage lazy loading in 3 different ways and get better performance out of your application. To learn more about Nuxt, visit my blog at the link below.